supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, founder of the Blended Pledge. And I'm so excited because today we've got Jim from Otonoma joining me here as our guest on the show. And you are not going to want to miss this one. Just his career journey alone is going to pique your interest, but also he's talking about how to use AI as a tool to the future, which is autonomy. And we're going to get into that just a little bit later. But of course, we could not have this show without our sponsor, the Secret Society of Supply Chain. Head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com to check out our membership groups and join us. We have the Secret Society of Supply Chain membership group, and we also have the Woman in Supply Chain Connections. And I want to give a shout out to some of our newest members. We've got Uma, Addie, Catherine, and to our Woman in Supply Chain Connections, we've got Kristen Harris, Emily Nichols, and Jennifer Morris is our newest ambassador at Connections, and she's going to be running some events over in Europe, which we are super, super excited about. So head over there, make sure you are part of the conversation. Now, we've got a lot of great things happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. If you are watching, I want to hear where you're watching from, so put that in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from, and then throughout the show, I want to see some fire emojis if you like the conversation. We love our fire emojis here at Let's Talk Supply Chain. All right. We've got a brand new podcast episode 482 with Mary from Pallet Alliance, one of my favorite people in this industry. She's talking about how to transform the way your business moves, and she's talking about pallets. And I can tell you some of the stories, some of the insights, some of the things shared in this particular episode is going to change your mind completely around pallets and how you think about pallets and how you can use them as your strategic advantage. So go and check that out wherever you listen to the show. Now, tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, we are going live for Coupa on the Margins, how to drive AI-powered procurement transformations with Andrea from Turo. We recorded this at Coupa Inspire, and you're going to love this conversation. So go ahead, click the attend button. Don't miss out on any minute of that. Even if you can't attend live, we will send you the link. And then on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm going live with Tatiana from RF Gen, and we're talking about how to build a resilient supply chain. If you missed Tatiana on a recent episode of Thoughts and Coffee, go and check that out on our YouTube channel, or definitely come and join us on Thursday. Again, click that attend button, even if you can't attend live, and we will send you the link to the episode so you don't miss all the great insights. And then, of course, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, Eric Johnson is hosting TPM Today, and he is talking about, what is he talking about? Will language rules trigger a trucking talent gap? What does that even mean? I can't wait to find out on Friday. Click the attend button and you will find out live what that means. Oh, I was going to talk about something else. Oh, never mind. I am so all over the place. All right. Last but not least, we've got some in-person events that we are hosting. I don't know if you've heard about this, but we are hosting the first ever pickleball slam at IANA Expo in Long Beach. Now, there's sponsorship opportunities, some very unique sponsorship opportunities, because more deals are made on the courts, the pickleball courts, than the golf course these days. So sign up today, whether you want to do sponsorship or sign up a team. Even if you have never played pickleball before, we are going, this event is really for everybody. People who know how to play pickleball, people who don't know how to play pickleball, and we are just going to have an amazing, amazing time. So click the link, make sure that you sign up to be a part of this event because there are only limited slots for that. Last but not least, I'm going to be on site in Paris for VizNow with Shipio November 6th. And stay tuned because all of the interviews that I'm going to be doing that day, we are going to be bringing to you live that afternoon here in North America because of the time difference. we can do that. So stay tuned for that. And hopefully you will join us for that live event. We will probably post that a little bit later on, a couple of months from now. Anyways, now it's time to bring up our guest for today. Jim, hello. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. Now, tell everybody who you are and what you do. I mean, don't tell them too much because we're going to get into that a little bit later on, but very high level, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Jim Harding. I've been building technologies for quite a long time. I go back to the original operating system before MS-DOS called QDOS at Seattle Computer Products here in Seattle. That's where I'm located, or near there. Been working across databases and networks and AI and e-commerce. I was at Amazon for a while. I was in charge of the Amazon marketplace and the launch of that. Just done a number of things. Now we're talking about sort of first principles on how we redo networking in the future.
Awesome. I love that. And we're going to get into a little bit more about Otonoma a little bit later on in the show. And you are thinking about supply chains so differently. And I think we all need to hear that. It's going to be a little bit refreshing. But before we do that, let's get to the poll of the week. So we ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning on our LinkedIn page. And sometimes we do it about supply chain and sometimes we have a little bit more fun. And so this question was, what would your dream office setting look like? Just for fun. We won't tell your boss. We had almost 260 votes on this one. 44% of you said beachfront with Wi-Fi. Although I have to say that never quite works out for me. I've tried that a number of times. That Wi-Fi network needs to be really, really strong. 25% says cozy cabin in the woods. 20% said rooftop city view. And 11% said anywhere with coffee. Now, Jim, I know that you are sitting in a very special place right now, and that could be the place of your dream office setting. So talk to us about what that looks like for you.
Yeah, definitely. I do have my dream office setting. I've been building this for quite some time. So at my office is a ranch. It's a bison ranch, yak ranch. It has basically 11 species on it, rams and goats and so forth. So I kind of surround myself with animals. Right behind me are a number of bison. So I can come up and feed them in the morning and they come up to the window. So I would say that's an ideal situation.
I love that. I think I would probably go for the beachfront, but I'll tell you that Wi-Fi has got to be pretty strong for that to happen. And I find sometime with the sun and the computer getting too hot. So I don't know if that's my dream. I think if I had an ideal dream office location, it would be the house would be on the water. And then, I had a window looking out. I'm a water person, so I'd really like to be in front of the water. Anyways, that's just me. All right. So I usually ask our guests at this point of the show for a bit of a market update, but because you have such an interesting background of what you've done and how you've touched supply chain and how you sort of come full circle back into supply chain, can we talk a little bit about your career journey, what that's looked like? You've mentioned Microsoft, you mentioned Amazon. Can you go into a little bit more detail for us?
Yeah, well, back in the old days, we used to do everything on mainframes and mini computers, right? And so coming out of the University of Washington, I met some people who were working on a way to not have to be dependent on that. And this is before IBM got into the PC market. And we had built this thing at Seattle Computer Products, a computer that was a 16-bit computer, like an 8086 chip. In fact, I have it here, the original one. I keep it around. This actual board is an 8086 chip from Intel that we got out of Oregon. And we thought, hey, we don't have to depend on mainframes anymore. This 16-bit chip is very fast. Let's go build something. And there was a guy named Gary Kildall who had built an operating system called CPM. Microsoft wanted it, IBM wanted it, we wanted it, but he didn't come up with a 16-bit version. So we built our own operating system. And the rest is sort of history. We built computers, but then Microsoft did the deal with us. They did a deal with IBM, and everything took off. The really smart people that came out of that wasn't us. We were good at building operating systems and computers, but not at marketing. And the really smart company that came out of was Dell when they said direct to consumer. They figured that out way before anybody else did.
Mm-hmm. And then I think from there, did you go to Amazon?
Well, I'd done a few things where I said, what's the next thing after operating systems? there weren't any applications that existed. All we had were computer languages at the time. And then Lotus 1-2-3 came out as a spreadsheet. And that was the first killer app and took off. And that's what sold the first 1 million computers was the spreadsheet. I went into databases because I thought that's where the applications would come. So I built a database company. I went into various other types of technology companies, but one of them was an AI company that I spun out of Battelle Memorial Labs in Richland. And it was a national lab, and we were doing AI, tracking emails from terrorists with the NSA.
Wait a second. You were doing AI? How long ago was this?
Well, AI has been around since the 50s, but
what?
Yeah, and the 60s and 70s and 80s. A lot of the really good thinking was back in the 60s and 70s. And we stopped calling it AI because it wasn't paying off. But the government wanted us to build a system that could scan the internet and email and look for terrorist activity. So we built this thing, very similar to a large language model today, but it was called support vector machines. Anyway, the technical definition doesn't matter. What matters is that we were able to go scan the internet, get emails, and say, I think there's terrorist activity going on here. So I took that and said, well, why don't we take this to market? And you do Yahoo queries at the time before Google. Let's do Yahoo queries and let's see what's in all this content out there on the internet. Well, I met with Amazon, Bezos, those guys. They needed an AI system of some sort to do recommendations, and that became the basis for the recommendation engine at Amazon. I later joined them and then built the Amazon Marketplace, which was quite an interesting story if you think about it.
Well, and it's interesting to me because you're talking about AI before anybody was really talking about AI. And so we talk about how if people aren't thinking about AI or supply chain professionals or people in industry and all that kind of stuff in 2025, like this just goes to show you're a little bit way far behind, right? Because companies like Amazon have been using it and thinking about it for almost decades, I would say.
Yeah, well, in computer science, back in the day, it was just a section you would take on artificial intelligence. What does it mean, right? There were many attempts at it, and it just never paid off. Mm-hmm. Now it's paying off, obviously. Moore's law has been around for a long time. All these algorithms have come to fruition, and now it's the fastest growing market of all time.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk about that. So we're going to be talking about AI, but we're also going to be talking about how to change our mindset around AI with what you're currently doing in the industry. And you've, throughout your career, even though you started in databases and computers, you have touched supply chain in a variety of different ways, including when you were at Amazon and through their fulfillment process as well. So let's get into our first article. I do want to say hi to Amrit, watching from Ontario, Wilfred from Minnesota. Again, if you like the conversation, want to see some fire emojis, also want to hear from you as to where you're tuning in. So let's start with Amazon. You have been at Amazon. You've worked there. You saw the growth and the launch, I think, of the fulfillment part of their program. And this particular article talks about how they are continuing to use AI, but how they're continuing to use their AI in fulfillment and delivery. And their fast approach to delivery includes an accurate forecast and demand system and the right positioning of inventory. They're saying that their AI forecasting is giving them 10% improvement in long-term national forecasts and 20% in regional. Talk to me about this, because we're going to get into how AI is just a tool in just a minute, but talk to us about how AI has sort of evolved in using AI to where we are today.
Yeah, well, Amazon initially was using AI to do recommendations. If customers bought this, other customers bought that, then there's some sort of correlation. Let's do that. That was really early on. It had nothing to do with fulfillment. But Amazon, as it grew in scale, partly because of the marketplace, and partly because of the sort of re-engineering of going from distribution centers to fulfillment centers by Jeff Wilke, once they got to scale, and then they allowed the resellers who, the magic of Amazon at the time was that we didn't have to touch anything. The marketplace said, just here's a third party, go sell it, and we just took a commission off that. But then when they started automating their fulfillment centers and allowing sellers to put stuff in their fulfillment centers, that changed the game. And then Amazon got to scale. They went from up to 500,000 robots to 1 million robots now. And so when you have a company that has proved that they can run at scale, and arguably the top supply chain company in the world, they can do interesting things, right? So when they bring a robot company in, for example, they don't just say, hey, just use the robot as is. They make the manufacturers make modifications so they can do what they need to do. So Amazon has incredible leverage. So then when they use robotics and AI together at scale in the supply chain, they can do predictions and be very, very, very accurate. I don't know another company on the planet that can be as accurately predictive as Amazon.
Well, and it's interesting because this article talks about how they're now going to have their robots working on natural language commands. And so one of the examples that they talked about was how you can give the robot a command of picking some orders from the yellow bin and putting those into the gray bin. And so they're really sort of taking that robotics to the next level, I think. And I mean, with 1 million robots, there is a lot of different things that they can do with that and sort of test out and figure out what's working and what's not working. And then they can tell the rest of us.
Yeah, that's interesting. On that article, they basically point out that you got the human machine interaction using natural language conversation using AI, right? So the robot doesn't really know anything about yellow bins and so forth, but the AI behind it does, right? So then humans can talk to that, and the robot can actually effectuate that interaction. So that's really, really interesting that they're doing that right now. I don't know anybody else doing that scale.
No, I don't know either. All right, let's get to our next article, because this takes what we're talking about in AI and takes it to a whole nother level. So, Jim, talk to us a little bit about Otonoma. What are you doing? How are you thinking about supply chain? How are you thinking about AI? And then I've got a couple of notes that I want to talk about once you're done.
Yeah, the idea of Otonoma is that we want to help the world become more autonomous. And AI's where most of the investment's going right now. Every single company is looking at their AI strategy, but AI is a means. The end really is to be more autonomous. Basically, meaning everything in your organization should be operating as autonomous as possible. Meaning the intelligence is in your organization and it's operating your organization. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's certain first principles at play here. Like, our networks aren't intelligent right now. No network on the planet is intelligent. It's just packets going back and forth. You have applications that are intelligent, that are doing things, and humans that are intelligent doing things. But your overall network, your system isn't intelligent. It's like the applications are intelligent. In the future, there aren't really going to be applications. They're just intelligent actors, if you will. Humans, robots, AI, agents, enterprise applications that become more intelligent. The future is about making that autonomous interactivity happen. But the only way you can really do that is to kind of change the first principles of how networks work. Now, that's kind of a big statement there I'm putting down. But I'm saying that from my experience, I've watched the whole PC revolution, the internet, the e-commerce, all these things happening. And we at Otonoma said, hey, we got to make these networks intelligent so that I can have orchestration and workflow and planning built into my system. And those three things aren't really combined in a way to make your operation of your organization work more efficiently. So that's what we're doing. We've figured out a way to build a next layer network on top of the internet, on top of your intranets, without joining into a greenfield operation. It's brownfield. So it's all about how you can make your network intelligent so your supply chain is not brittle, so your factory operations are orchestrated with everything down the line.
Well, and I think, and we're going to get into this in a minute. And if anybody has any questions, make sure to put them in the comments now, because we'll be able to get to those in the next 5 minutes or so, because we'd love to hear from you. I mean, the fact is that you're talking about how AI is the vehicle to something bigger, which is autonomy, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about connecting intelligence for independent action in supply chain. And you might want to elaborate on that, because right now what you're saying is information and action are not working in unison in our supply chains. And that's the future of the industry. That's where we want to go. That's what we want it to look like. And so we want that autonomous supply chain happening. And how long do you think that it's going to take for us to be able to do that?
It's a migration journey, much like the web was, but it'll happen faster because everybody has computers now. Everything's connected to everything. Now we need to make those connections intelligent. So the way I think about it is that as you brought up Amazon earlier, they're the big dog, right? They have the most scale. They have the most people with the most tools, the most programmers, the most AI applications, the most robots of anyone. So you look at them and say, that's the model. Well, how do I do that? Like if I have a company, how do I do like Amazon? Well, you can't. I mean, you can't have that scale. So what we're saying is like the things that Amazon are doing are making things more autonomous, right? When you talked about that robot example where you talk about putting things into the yellow bin, that's an autonomous system where you have a person and a machine are talking independently and taking action. Well, we want that all across our organization. Now, I'm not saying it has to be robotics necessarily, but I'm saying that you want to have the kind of things that Amazon does by creating this AI to autonomous world. And so what we're saying is we can speed that up because here's this new network. Amazon actually doesn't have this network, but obviously have something that is as effective. But we want to build something for you that can be as effective by giving you that ability to have orchestration and workflow and planning built into your operation.
Mm-hmm. And really, so I think one of the other things that I read was that it helps with unexpected events. Obviously, in the last couple of years, supply chain has been thrown into chaos because of disruption in a number of different ways. How can it help us with that, right? Because I think, and we're going to talk about tariffs in just a minute because that's kind of on top of everybody's minds. And we're going to use the example of Nintendo. But before we get to that, how does it help us with those unexpected events and not having to do everything so manually? Because right now with the tariffs, it throws every single piece of that supply chain into chaos, from customs brokerages trying to figure out, tariffs and duties on different shipments, depending on when they've left and when they've come in and all sorts of things, right? And we're all connected, and every single one of these events affects every single piece of that supply chain.
Yeah, the problem is you have these shocks that come at you that you weren't expecting, right? And I'll just, supply chains are relatively brittle. And the problem is that when we build our systems, like we get down at a low level and we say, I'm going to connect this API to that API, connect this application to this one. You build these things, they work, but then when a shock hits the system, these things are so tightly coupled that you can't break them. So you actually can't go from here to there because things are connected and buried in their connections. The way you want to think about this is the way we've thought about it with the parent is thinking everything is decoupled. Right? Okay, I have this intelligence and I have orchestration around that. And I want to say, what I want to do, not how I need to do it. So when you have an AI-driven orchestration system like what's built into the Paranet, then when these actors, if you will, like everything is an actor on the Paranet. That's why I'm saying it's this new layer, this new first principles, humans, robots, AI agents, everything are actors in this network. The actors on the network are decoupled from the actual physical implementation. So when a request comes in, it says, I need to do this, and it says, I can't, someone else needs to do that. The orchestration of the network says, okay, who's going to handle that? And that ripples down through the network until someone can solve that. So in the old days of computing, like going from LANs to the web, we were really experiencing this decoupling moment where we used to build things into our local area networks, LANs. And then when the web came out, no, these are servers around the world. We can connect to them. We decoupled. The same thing has to happen with supply chains. We got to decouple the stuff. So we need to make things dynamic so the intelligence can work out.
I've been using that word a lot, dynamic. I like that word, especially in some of the things that we've been doing. We've got static and dynamic, and we're moving towards more of a dynamic environment as well. And so I think now that you've said that, I feel like we're on the right track. All right, let's get to our last article. And I want to talk about this because if you have not seen this article about how Nintendo is trying to navigate through the tariff storm, this actually goes into quite a bit of depth as to how they're thinking about unexpected events like the tariffs and what does it mean for them and what does it mean for the launch that they just did of the Switch 2 and why they didn't change any of the dates. They did pause pre-orders, and they paused pre-orders so that they could observe what was going to happen, which I thought was really interesting. But right now, they're facing 46% tariffs on their products because they bring them in from Vietnam. Now there's a pause right now, and we're going to see what's going to happen in the future. But that can be a really big hit to your bottom line. But they also talk about how they've thought about moving production, but it takes 9 to 12 months to move production. And usually somebody like a Nintendo that decides on a facility that they want to use for production, they want to use it for 5 to 10 years because they want to get it right in a variety of different ways. And so this affects companies and organizations when we think about, talking about nearshoring and bringing some of that production back into the country. There's a lot to think about, right? There's a lot of moving parts. They also have to think about their tier 2 and tier 3 alignment as well, because, if their products are coming from other countries that have tariffs on there, there's a lot to think about. Now, this is one of the unexpected events, Jim, that we've kind of talked about just recently or in the last article. How would Paranet sort of help with that? You sort of talked about how it needs to be decoupled, but how would it help with an unexpected event like a tariff?
Yeah, well, it goes back to your now new favorite word, dynamic, right? So if you have these sort of static organizational structures that can't change, then a tariff that says you can't be in this country, you have to be in this next country. That's sort of an impossibility over the next 9 months, right? You can't just do that. So companies need to be thinking about how they can defend themselves against that. There's companies that are doing the reshoring here in the United States. A really good example of that as Guardian Bicycles in Seymour, Indiana. And they've figured out, okay, we want to be the next big bicycle company. They're doing very, very well. Lots of automation and so forth. We're talking to them about how to, greater automate that company. Autonomy is to make autonomous. And, so they're looking at like localized steel in the United States. They have, a big event coming up, soon about, how they've been so successful. So there are companies that are doing the reshoring, particularly doing, American-based type manufacturing. They have sort of put themselves in a position to not be stuck by these things by reshoring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right. To be able to think about supply chains in a different way, to be able to move production taking 9 months. And I think about some of the companies right now, and I think about procurement departments and what they're going through as far as like having to negotiate with suppliers and having to support suppliers in a variety of different programs so that they can then support them. And I feel like if we could have a network like this where we don't necessarily have to pour all of this manual time, energy, and effort into our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Because if you think about it, you're talking about in the instance of some of the bigger companies, a wide array of suppliers and components. Like this could be up to 1 million components that we're talking about just in one network for one procurement department. And I think if we can bring the network together and if we can make it a little bit more autonomous, I think it would definitely help a lot of the supply chain professionals, procurement professionals really handle some of these unexpected events, but also the day-to-day, the regulations that are coming out and all sorts of things.
Yeah, Sarah, on that one, if you look at the sign you have behind you there, that wooden sign about collaboration is the future.
Oh, this way, no.
You had the sign about collaboration in the future. And really, when you're talking about a dynamic system, it really is about really fast collaboration. And the collaboration is happening between machines, software doing things. They're all collaborating like the way we see it on the Paranet. That's what it's all about. That we actually have a protocol called the Paranet Collaboration Protocol. So whether it's a human, robot, software, AI agent, they're all collaborating. And when those big shocks come, the collaboration has to happen immediately and coherently. And you have to know who's making what decisions, who asks what questions. And on the Paranet, what we're saying is it's a network of all these decisions. You see transparently everything going on. And so when those shocks happen, you have to be able to know who's talking to whom, whether it's a machine or a person, and what were the results of that so you can measure it. So that's how we're looking at that problem. And it's back to like a first principles. You got to rethink how your networks work. They have to be intelligent. Otherwise, they cannot absorb the shocks. It's just too much work and rework.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to end on that note. Jim, your insights have been so invaluable today and helping us as professionals in supply chain sort of thinking about what we're doing today, but thinking about what our supply chains of the future can look like and what the possibilities are. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us for the discussion today. Jim, thanks so much for joining me on Thoughts